Stephen Vantassel. You're listening to Living the Wildlife, discussing all things related to vertebrate pest control as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek podcast for Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Glad to have you on board. Do take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel, and you can definitely ring the bell and make sure you to get notified of future updates to our podcast. If you're not familiar with our particular show, Living the Wildlife, we deal with all kinds of elements related to the vertebrate pest field. So you have pest control, which does a little bit of work in vertebrates, often in birds and commensal rodents, but then you have people who specialize in vertebrate control where they handle a whole lot more, everything from raccoons and skunks and bats and beavers and geese and other types of things as well. So that's the vertebrate side. So obviously, those of you who are pest controllers who are dealing with insects and doing some vertebrate work, and of course those of you who are dealing primarily with vertebrates and maybe doing some bug work on the side, there's obviously a lot of overlap between these two disciplines, but my concentration is on the vertebrate pest control side. If you're not interested in subscribing at YouTube, you can definitely visit my webpage in Rumble under Wildlife Control Consultant, and I post my podcast there as well. Would love to hear your comments and thoughts, suggestions for shows, criticisms, and perhaps you maybe want to have beyond the show. Perhaps you have a new product or idea that you'd like to disseminate out to a wider audience. You can reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, and also you can check us out on Facebook with the Pest Geek Podcast family. Join the revolution, as Franklin calls it, where you can collaborate with other people, like-minded people within our Pest Geek Podcast family. Well, this week I wanted to talk about Goodnature. This is the Goodnature A18. Now you may say, boy, that looks familiar, and you're right. It looks very similar to the A24 trap, and so you can see it here on the screen. If you're looking at this, the A18 is just a larger version of the A24. Now, the A24 is designed for rats and smaller rodents. This A18 is designed for squirrels around that size. So squirrel can be very similar to a rat. I mean, a lot of times other people say that squirrels are just simply rats that climb trees, but sometimes squirrels can be a little bit larger than rats, and so this particular device is designed for them. Now, I have not had the opportunity to try it out. We don't have a ton of squirrels here in Montana. We do have squirrels. We don't have a ton of them, but we do have ground squirrels. Now, I've used the A24 on ground squirrels, but I haven't used the A18. The A24 was more than enough, but I'm wondering if the A18 would give some additional flexibility. I don't know, but I thought I haven't even opened the box yet, so I got my box. You can see it's about $200 for this, and so why don't we open it up and see what's inside. So I'm kind of excited. Again, it's a bit pricey, to be sure, but again, the technology is sort of amazing. So let's see if I can get this opened up here without making a total fool of myself. Oh, how do we get this open here? All right, so we push it through. Okay. So it has some great labeling on both sides. See the packaging there, the A18, pretty neat. So it's got this little box. So we'll open this up here. And you can see how it's laid out on the inside. So it has the instruction kit, sort of a quick guide. I'm a little familiar with the product, so I don't have to necessarily read all of it, although you should if you're new to this. This isn't a toy, so I want to be sure I'm clear about that. It's a great trap. I'm very impressed with it, okay? But I want to make sure I warn you that it's not necessarily going to be legal in every state, right? We have various states like, that may ban different types of equipment, different types of traps, and so you better make sure you find out whether this is legal. Once you start getting beyond some of the commensal rodent stuff, things can get a little complicated because now you're starting to deal with wildlife, not an unprotected species, okay? So make sure you check up on your local laws to make sure you're going to be legal with this particular device. So let me try to clear some space on my table here. So this is the main guts of the device. So what this is that this is where the carbon dioxide cylinder would go. Now you would take off the rubber cap, and you can see there how it has a little metal end on the end of it, closing it off so that way you don't lose all your carbon dioxide gas. And what you do is you place it up in here by screwing it in, and when you screw it far enough, there's a little pin at the top which punctures your tube, which allows this gas to escape and charge the system. Because how it works is you have a gas-powered plunger, so when the rodent sticks his head up there, he hits that little bar. I hope you can see it there. Maybe I need to get my flashlight out for you, so make sure you can see it. So there's a little triggering mechanism. Hope that shows up for you. You should be able to see that little bar there. And when they hit that, that's what causes the plunger to fire. And so you get a plunger that comes across and hits them in the skull because their face goes up in here, hit that trigger, and it basically crushes their head, and then they drop back out. Pretty neat. But again, you don't want your finger up there, okay? Because it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt a lot, okay? So because there's a lot of force coming through this. So again, you're using a canister, placing it up here, charging it, and that's how you're going to, now the bait, where does the bait go? The bait goes up here. They have little, I don't have any bait in this because I bought another device and it has some bait containers, and so the bait container basically screws in at the top, and then you would put this down. Now, a lot of people just simply squeeze out the material that's inside of it and then use this peanut butter. But, so you can certainly do that. My understanding is that they've changed their formulation. Now, this particular trap was designed in New Zealand because New Zealand has serious problems with invasive species. Obviously, it's an island country. And so when the Europeans came to New Zealand, a lot of the rats and different types of animals jumped off the ship. Sometimes they would actually bring an animal and reintroduce it to try to quote-unquote control things, and then they would become a pest in and of themselves. So they have what they call stoats, which are really weasels, and they ravage the native wildlife there. A lot of animals that are native to New Zealand are getting hammered by these invasive species. So New Zealand has spent an inordinate amount of research, both in development of new techniques, and this is certainly one of them, and well as using toxicants. So they're concerned about toxicant use, so there's been a bigger push for getting traps to kill these invasive species, so therefore they're not using rodenticides and putting those into the environment. The problem with traps, of course, is that you often catch an animal, then you have to go out and release it. Not with this, because this relies on a repeating mechanism, because you have the charge and you can get about 18 different hits off of this. I think that's where the 18 comes from, where the A24, you can get about 24 hits. So once it kills the animal falls out with gravity, and then it resets. Really cool. So you don't have to necessarily go out there every day checking it. Now, be sure you follow your state laws, because here in the U.S., because some states have mandatory trap checks, right? So you have to make sure. This is where the technology often is going faster than the regulations. This is why, and this is one of my hobby horses, I know why our industry needs to do a much better job lobbying the government to change its regulations so that we can start taking advantage of some of these particular tools, right? But I can assure you the industry has not listened to me. So maybe you will, maybe you'll be the person who can get the industry to move forward with that. So again, this is where the gas that charges the piston, animal sticks its head up inside, hits it, gets killed, drops back down. This is where the bait goes. Now, how do you set it up? Well, this is where this particular device is. So we're going to, hopefully you can see this, you're going to pinch here, you're going to pinch that off, and you're going to take that particular cover. This is something you could screw to a tree, to a wall, to a post. You're going to screw that in, and then you can place this on and now you've anchored it to a particular post. Now, how high off the ground do you need it? Well, I would probably say for a squirrel, probably 4 or 5 inches off. Let the squirrel the squirrel needs to be able to stand and get their head up inside of it. Now, you can certainly put this up against a tree, screw it to a tree, or lash it to a tree. Perhaps you could put a little stick here and then lash the stick to the tree. That way you're not damaging the bark of the particular tree. There are different ways to do that. And then they also have stands that you can use on these as well. I don't know if they've designed one for the new size, because this is a much heavier duty version than the A24, because it's trying to kill a larger animal, but I would suspect they will come out with additional equipment. I also believe they'll come out with a bait station, because they have one for the A24, and I would suspect they'll come out with a bait station for this as well. But I'm excited. I'm looking forward to giving it a whirl, to checking it out and seeing if I can find a situation where I can play with this particular device. And I would certainly love to see if you have any video of it being used in the field. I would love to see it. Perhaps we can do a show with your experiences out into the field. Is it the end all and be all? No, but it's again another tool in the toolbox. I do have one concern, and that is with pets. Because animals like a raccoon or cat or dog, especially if you're using something based with fat up in here, they're going to be very attracted to it, and they're going to try to put their face or going to put their paw up there, and it's going to get hammered by that piston that comes across and hits this way, and that's going to be a problem. I would think that people with pets are not going to be happy about that. So I'd be quite concerned about where you're putting this outside, and especially if you're putting it in at ground level. I would encourage you to be thinking about placing this in elevated areas. If you are going to put it in elevated areas, just make sure there's a platform, because squirrels like to stand on something and then push their head up. Could they do it when they're on the tree? Yes, but I don't think you'll have as much success doing that. So you'd want to probably have some sort of a platform that you would then secure so the squirrel could stand on it, maybe put a little peanut butter down on there and chum them, and then they would be able to hit that and get hit with the particular device. Now you may say, well, how do I know when I'm getting low or if I've had activity? Because scavengers are going to be picking up the carcasses. Well, that's a great question. And that's where this particular device comes in. This particular device here is a counter, and it relies on the vibration of the plunger hitting across here that will then count how often it's been fired. And so this actually fits on, I need more hands here. This will fit on this. So you get the idea. So this is, I haven't put it on far enough. I'm not going to waste the time to do that. But I actually think I even have it upside down. So let me get that fixed here. So let's do this. Okay. So, nope, I didn't have it upside down. There we go. So this is going to show you when you press the button, it has a battery inside, and it will give you a number across the top. Maybe see, there we go there. You can see the number showing you that it's been, how many are left, right? So you'd need to reset this, obviously, because I haven't fired anything with this particularly yet, but probably some of the vibration. And again, pretty cool, so you can get an idea of a count. You don't have to purchase that if you don't want to. You can certainly just use your trail camera. Perhaps you'd want to have some sort of a record of what's happening with it, especially when you're getting comfortable with it. But I think it's a pretty cool item for those of you who live in states and areas where you can use a lot of different tools. You don't have a lot of restrictive regulations. I think the Goodnature A18 and the A24, I've done a previous podcast on the A24. I think this is going to be just another tool that's going to be helpful, especially for those people perhaps who have fruit trees, who are concerned about raiding of fruit trees by squirrels. Now you have a way to kill squirrels without having to be out there every single day. And also, this will work on rats as well, as will the A24. So definitely check it out. I think there is a lot to be said for it. A little pricey, but again, it's certainly a lot cheap when you factor in how much travel time you'd have to make to recheck traps all the time when they're cage traps. This will pay for itself relatively quickly, and I'll be interested to see how all those of you out in the workforce are enjoying this particular trap, or whether you have criticisms of it. I would love to hear from you. I don't make any money on this particular. I bought this myself. I don't have any contractual relationship with Goodnature, but I am intrigued by this particular device, and I'm excited about its future. And I'm really glad it's come to America. A18 Goodnature, check it out. Now, the website says pre-order only. Not sure how true that is, because I obviously pre-ordered and then I got this. I think several days ago. So they clearly are able to get some. They have to import them, and so I would think that they're going to be in stock. Maybe they're already sold out and they have to pre-order again. I don't know, but I don't think you'd have to wait too long. But if squirrels are your problem, definitely give it a whirl, and don't forget to check it out with the A24, a little smaller version than this. Maybe this A24 will work for you, because if it works on mice, I think it would work on squirrels too, but I think they would recommend the A18. A little bit more juice to it. Well, I'm Stephen Vantassel. You've been listening to Living the Wildlife. Do take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to our channel. Definitely drop me a line at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. That's wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you, your comments, criticisms, thoughts for new shows. Perhaps you want to be interviewed on the show. I would, again, love to hear from you. Do take a few moments as well and subscribe to our channel, definitely, whether on YouTube or with me on Rumble. And then lastly, I want you to be thinking about living the wildlife. Why do we want to have you think about living the wildlife? Because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everybody.